morning and welcome to the fourth hour. It's great to have you. Oh, David, 55 in California today, he says. David, which sounds beautiful, but I got to tell you, it's about 25, I think, in Sioux Falls this morning. And that is a big improvement over yesterday. I mean, we were down sub-zero wind chills and so on. Yeah, 20. I agree with Steve. 28 here this morning, so it's actually quite nice. Hey, it's great to have you guys along. I appreciate it. Hey, Steve, thanks. Steve, I'm just curious. Did you call this morning just to have the new call screener? My new call screener Rose started, and she's great. She's really terrific. I think she's going to work out very, very nicely. It sounded like Donald Trump suddenly. What's happened? But I wondered, Stephen, I think I mentioned this on the air. I half wondered if you called just to talk to my screener. Less interest in talking to me. No, not the only reason, he says. I appreciate it. Had to initiate it. Exactly right. And she did a terrific job. So it's kind of, one of my goals, obviously, is to get the podcast up and running again. And that's going to take us a little bit of time. So that'll be among the next steps that I'll be taking with her coming up next week is we'll get the Greg Belfrage show podcast up and running again, so that if you miss the actual morning show, you want to listen to the podcast later. I had a lot of people who responded to that, and it's like, what happened to your podcast? Why are the podcasts gone? And I don't produce the podcasts. My producer does each day. That's part of their responsibilities and job. And I'm really, really grateful for that. So it'll be nice to get those up and running again. That'll be a priority as Rhodes gets a little bit more comfortable. I wanted to ease her into, answering calls, screening calls. That really is the major part of the job. And it's just amazing. And I told her this morning. As I was leaving the studio, I said, you cannot believe how much that frees me up to concentrate on what I'm saying into the microphone versus, answering the phone and, jumping into phone calls really kind of cold. We've got an 8-second delay that's always in effect up on Kello. So just in case somebody else goes off the deep end, I can, I've got an 8-second delay to whether it's profanity or anything else. I can, either cut them off and delay that, or just that 8 seconds gives me a buffer. But having a call screener there who was spoken to callers ahead of time and really trying to point them in the right direction, it makes for a better broadcast. And so I think it's going to take all of you a little bit of time to get used to having that person again. And so we were touching on things this morning. She's on the call with one caller. And I told her, don't be afraid to just tell that person, forgive me, I'll be right back. Hold on just a second. And then take a call and say, I've got other callers on the line. Will you hold? Put them on hold. And seeing those starting to build up this morning, it was good for me to see us moving in that direction again. So I thank you for your patience, because what it has meant on the radio show is that I wind up, there are a number of times where it's just like, I know what it is I want to talk about, and I don't take calls specifically, and I would much rather pull you into the program. The exception being the 6 a.m. hour. The 6 a.m. hour, I'm trying to let you know, okay, here's what's new this morning. Here's what you're waking up to today. Here are the stories. These are the big stories, and then followed by these are the stories that are trending today. And so I'm pretty easy time in the 6 a.m. hour moving through all of those each day. But in the 7 and 8 o'clock hour in particular, I love engaging with you and love getting your thoughts and going through your calls. And so that is very much a priority for me with Rose now in place. And you'll hear me doing that more often, setting the table for you to join the conversation and welcoming your phone calls. That's always been a big part of what I've done. Your phone calls are important to me. And I'm glad to be able to get back to them. So there are a few stories that I wanted to share with you this morning. Yeah, and I told Steve was saying Rose had asked him for his last name, and I told her all I need is a first name. And I don't care if it's your real name. All I'm looking for is a name so that I can refer to you by your name rather than go, hey, you, or, otherwise I don't know who it is. So I just want to be able to respond to people because there are those that call into the show and they use a false first name. Some of them are known to me and some of them aren't. And I don't care. I just want to have a name by which I know you. So if Frank is not your real name, but you always call in under Frank, and then it helps me know, okay, Frank is a regular caller, or Frank is Frank is on the left, or Frank, whatever. I just know it really helps me as I'm taking phone calls if I have a first name for my callers. So anyway, that's part of the reason why she's asking for names. So she was asking for full names, and I told her as I was seeing that, because we started taking calls at 7, and I told her at 7:30, I don't need last names. All I'm looking for is a first name. So just first names. And then I noticed as we were taking calls again, and then she started, I saw her deleting the last name. So, it's a process. You know how it is when you start a new job. So I'm really trying to be as patient and as kind as I can with her because I'm just really grateful that she's there. Because as I was saying, what it allows me to do when I'm on the air is focus on what I'm saying. And then when I do engage with a caller, I can have an idea of what they want to talk about and then engage with them in more detail. The yes or no questions that I ask on the air, and I'm sure you've noticed that on the air, generally I'm asking you a yes or no question. That's just to get things rolling. My intent is to dive deeper into your thoughts. And especially if you say something that sparks my interest, it's like, that's something I want to pick up on, or, we'll have a conversation, but the yes or no questions are just to get the ball rolling. And it's one of the things I've learned over time. And it helps, folks say, yeah, it's like, heck yeah, or, heck no. And we can go from there. So it's really nice to have her along this morning. Okay, there are a few stories I wanted to share, and we may run it a little bit short today. I was spending some time with Rose up in the studio after the program this morning, just recapping some of these things, making sure she's okay, asking if she needs anything. As far as I know, she's coming back tomorrow, and I'm excited about that. So Donald Trump on Truth Social saying the so-called bishop who spoke at the National Prayer Service Tuesday morning was a radical left hardline Trump hater. She brought her church, and this story has been all over the place here this morning. So she brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone, not compelling or smart. She failed to mention the large number of illegal migrants that came into our country and killed people. Many were deposited from jails and mental institutions. It is a giant crime wave that is taking place. He said, apart from her inappropriate statements, the service was a very boring and uninspiring one. She is not very good at her job. She and her church owe the public an apology. Yeah, there are a lot of folks, who want to make things personal and so on. The Well, and this is the thing. Robert is asking the question about vetting the bishop. It's tradition that presidents go to that church. It's just become a tradition that presidents do that. That's why Donald Trump was there. So it's not like this was some presidents do that generally. That's the church that they attend prior to the inauguration. So John is saying it's time to change the tradition. And Steve says, I suspect she was placed in that position on purpose, maybe. Melissa, the bishop was an Episcopalian bishop. They used to not be political, and now they are woke, primarily the North American Anglican Church. Yeah, and that is, when I go to church, that's the last thing I want. That kind of stuff. The politics in general. I mean, there are times that politics, that religion is correct to address what's going on in politics, especially these days. A lot of what's going on is, at odds with biblical doctrine, I think. So it's certainly appropriate at times, and I'm not offended by that. But woke in church, I think I'm going to say hell no to that. Not only no, but hell no, going that way. And Steve's making a point here. When I go to sporting events in church, I'm there for the specific event, not for a political speech. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think that there is a way, when you go to church, there is a way to address issues, I think, that are impacting your clergy, and do that in not a woke way, but in a mindful, intelligent, biblically based way. And that, unfortunately, is not what we're seeing. And so that story was actually trending this morning. There was another story I want to share with you regarding, and I touched on this on the air, but the interim FBI director taking over. And I'm gonna flip through this a little bit. Let's get down to the meat of this story. That the retirement of Paul Abate was a good idea. He had to have known that his days were likely very much numbered. It's been widely publicized and well known that Paul Abate was involved in pushing the raid at Mar-a-Lago. Also, he was very involved in pushing the January 6th misdemeanor cases that were worked rigorously at the FBI. I imagine that he knew, rather than being removed upon Trump's arrival, that it might be in his best interest to just move on. And I think that probably was a good idea on his part. Excuse the cough. So that story really caught my attention this morning. I didn't make a very big deal of that. So you've got who is it who is temporarily leading the FBI? Brian Driscoll, acting director of the FBI. And so again, once Kash Patel is confirmed, I'm assuming he'll be confirmed. Once Kash Patel is confirmed, Patel will take over. But for right now, it's Brian Driscoll as the acting director of the FBI. And a number of staffers were reassigned. And Nicole Parker, this is Nicole Parker, who is a Fox News contributor, is the one making these statements here. She said, I come from the private sector before the FBI, and I noticed such a contrast. The private sector, if you're not doing your job, of course, you're going to get fired. But when you come to the federal government, there was almost this mood of, we're untouchable. And I really believe that those days are over. You are working for the American taxpayers. It is their taxpayer dollars that need to be put to good use. And if you're not doing your job, you really should be removed. Duh. So, and that's where I think so many of us would agree with her. Yeah, absolutely. That's the way it works in the private sector. That's the way you see these things transpire. And it'll be nice to see that return to the not only the administration, but these agencies. I think these agencies have been clearly in need of major overhaul, and it begins today. All right, there's another story over at the New York Post. I got a kick out of this. The boss at CNN told the staff not to express outrage during Donald Trump's inauguration. So Mark Thompson told them to knock it off. He cautioned them against expressing any outrage of their own. And this was a meeting on Sunday. He made it clear he did not want CNN's coverage to relitigate the past, he said. So he also asked, now again, he's talking to about 100 people, to avoid editorializing, as well as to steer coverage away from focusing on Trump's legal problems. Instead, he said they should be open-minded about the next 4 years. A CNN spokesperson declined to comment. What a surprise. So at the end of the call, he opened the floor to allow staffers. I would have just sat there with my mouth shut. What Thompson and other top brass had communicated was clear, and none of the meeting participants apparently had the desire to question the guidance. You kind of know, right? I mean, I certainly know. I've been in meetings, and maybe I'm feeling that burn, the blood's coming, and to keep your mouth shut. You also know, okay, this is how I'm feeling at the moment, and I got to get over that. So I'll give this a day. I'll simmer on this for a day, and then I'll come back to it, and I'll see if I got a more grounded reason for responding in this kind of way. So it's, that's pretty incredible. All right, let's take a look at some of your comments here. Steve is saying he chuckled yesterday when Elise Stefanik took the Democratic senator to task for asking her about Elon Musk's Nazi salute. Yeah, that's the dumbest thing ever, isn't it? Melissa, as if Elon were thinking about Nazis. Not. Robert, I feel very much like you do, and I have not watched CNN in a long period of time because I don't respect them. And it's the same way with a number of the other journalists and publications and websites, and it's I've zeroed in, on maybe especially I would say about a half dozen that I find to be very, very meaningful. And I concentrate on those. And then as I have time, I look at other places, and Google News is always good for Google News. I mean, you go look at the headlines on Google News. It's like, what? And it's all left wing or worse. I mean, it's all left wing or worse media, and it's just a little bit crazy. That's all I've got for you this morning. I'm going to leave it there today. be headed out. There's a luncheon today to the culmination of the Heroes Behind the Badges blood drive. And both firefighters and police will be there, and of course, blood bank. And it's always a really nice presentation. And so I'm going to be headed out to that. That's coming up this morning at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to cut it a little bit short. I'll leave it there for today. Hope you'll come back tomorrow and bring your friends, will you? Don't bring your friends along. Force them if necessary. That's how desperate I've gotten. Thanks so much for being here. Hit that like button before you go. I'll see you again tomorrow, and may God bless, my friend. Take care.